Hi, and good afternoon. Welcome to what will now be our third week of NatWest and partnership with TiE Live Interviews. I'm sure those of you who've tuned in already will have been blown away by the calibre of guests that we've had in the first 2 weeks. And this week is going to be absolutely no different. I guarantee you that. So my name's Dale Sidebottom. I'm one of the regional directors for the bank's entrepreneurship team. And I thought just before we hand over to our weekly host, VCAS, I just wanted to talk a little bit today around our NatWest Business Builder platform. Over the past few months, we've been building a platform of support for entrepreneurs and business leaders where we know we can add value to some of those pain points, some of those areas of expertise that as an entrepreneur, as a business leader, starting up, on your business journey can really help. And this week you'll see NatWest Business Builder featuring advertisement up and down the country and actually on national TV. We are really proud of the platform that we've built, and actually the feedback that we've had from entrepreneurs that have been through the NatWest Business Builder platform has been phenomenal. So I've got an ask this week. If you are a business leader, you are an entrepreneur tuning in, please do search for the NatWest Business Builder website. It really is a platform which will give you tools, techniques, which we know can help you in that entrepreneurial journey. And as I've said before, we're in unprecedented times at the moment. So all the skills and support that we do as an organisation, we are really focusing hard on. So without further ado, I'll hand over to our weekly host, VCAS. So really looking forward to another session that we've got lined up today. VCAS, over to you.
Joining us today. Thank you. So we're really lucky today to be joined by Nitin Rai, who's joining us from Portland, Oregon today, where it's a beautiful sunny day, unlike that for most of us here in England today. So Nitin is the founder and managing partner of Elevate Capital. They're a venture capital fund that includes the Elevate Inclusive Fund, a seed stage fund that invests in diverse and underserved entrepreneurs, predominantly in the Pacific Northwest. What's unique about their work is nearly 60% of their investments are in female-led companies and 40% in African-American and Latin-founded startups. Since 2016, they've invested more than $10 million in 38 startups, which have now raised follow-on funding of over $80 million and achieved a market cap of over $213 million and over 500 jobs in the process. These companies also report 50% of their employees as diverse, and they've already had 2 fantastic exits. Some of you may also know that Nitin was the former global chair of TiE, which is the largest entrepreneurs network in the world, and led TiE Global Angels to really give TiE a foothold in the global angel investment market. His chapter, TiE Oregon, through TiE Oregon Angels, have invested themselves more than $12 million into 52 startups that have resulted in 11 exits. And they're one of the top 3 chapters globally and routinely receive recognition for their angel investment capacity. So Nitin himself has invested in over 100 startups since 2011, personally and through his fund. He's a successful entrepreneur in his own right, starting his career in Silicon Valley, which we'll talk about today. And also, he is one of my very good friends and has been a mentor to me through my journey with TiE. And we're very, very lucky to have you today with us, Nitin. So welcome, Nitin.
Thank you. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be back with TiE UK and UK Northwest. So
great. Well, I think it'd be great just to start, right at that beginning of your journey, So like so many of the most successful people in the US, you were the product of people immigrating to the country. Right. What were those early years like for you? And how did you then kind of find yourself in entrepreneurship?
Well, I got to the US on a bus from Nova Scotia with $100 in my pocket and an internship in Silicon Valley. And I was lucky, actually. This was not in my game plan, but it just so happened. I spent a couple of years in Silicon Valley, and those were probably the best years of my life. Like, the whole world was open to you, and I didn't even know where Silicon Valley was. I thought it was in LA. But that experience as a young engineer, and in sort of, I was tied in with a global organization that actually sponsored me to go to Silicon Valley. It was a great learning experience. Being in 2 startups was a great learning experience in terms of what it takes to get a company off the ground and then grow and prosper. Eventually, I ended up in Oregon at a much larger company, and I always knew that at some point I would start my own company, which I eventually did, and that's First Insight. So I would say the 2 years in California were amazing. The first 3-4 years in Oregon were really challenging because I kept running into glass ceilings at the place I worked at.
Really?
Finally, I said, I quit. I'll create my own table. And that's what happened to me. And that's what sort of led me to start my own company.
Yeah. I'd love to talk about that. So when you say that you hit glass ceilings, was this in terms of, a lack of diversity in those businesses at that point in your career? Or do you think it was down to attitudes about people who'd come from India and elsewhere in the world?
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly a lot of, what's interesting is that one of the reasons I took the job at this company in Oregon was my lead architect and my manager were both Indian, and I'd never worked for anybody Indian. So, and they were doing some groundbreaking technical work. I mean, I could have gone and worked for Microsoft, and I didn't. And part of it was that I thought that I was coming into a very diverse company and a very diverse environment. But unfortunately, both of them left within 6 months. And then, I was kind of left with what I was doing, which was really taking care of that technology. And where I ran into challenges were that anytime I wanted to take a leadership role, I'd be shut down and I'd be put away. And I was told that I wasn't ready yet. But if I could do it, then these 3 other folks could do it. I'm like, no, but I'm doing the work. I'm actually doing the work. And then eventually, it led to a lot of struggles around equal pay, fair compensation. So there were many challenges. Without like putting on the work that I was doing, I mean, I had a lot of responsibility, and I think people recognize my abilities and my capabilities. But there was always like, oh, you Indians are good engineers, but you're not necessarily good leaders or good founders or good CEOs. Wow. And that was happening in Silicon Valley as well, which is why TiE got started, right? That was one of the reasons for TiE to come into fruition, was that a number of us who were down in the Bay, had the same challenges. And eventually, once some of us became successful, it was like time to give back and support the next generation of entrepreneurs, including Indian entrepreneurs, with mentoring and investment. So, so I had my share of those challenges.
Wow. And was it those, we'll come to the TiE journey in a few minutes, but, was it those challenges that you experienced that meant that you chose to create a venture capital firm that invests specifically in those diverse and underserved entrepreneurs?
Yes, it's very much germane to my own experience with racism, with prejudice, with people sort of, one of the reasons why underserved entrepreneurs, whether it's women, minorities, people of color in this country, they're overlooked because, their success is always underestimated and their ability to fulfill is overestimated. And I have gone through that for years, including even as a fund manager. So, so despite all the work, despite all of my success and accomplishments, when it comes time for that evaluation, yes, we get pattern matched to that piece. So the bar is always higher for us. So when I got the opportunity to start a fund, and I was approached to start a fund, I chose this route because I've been one of them. So I can empathize, and I understand the challenges that exist for them. And I want, and to me, this TiE network was really powerful to open it up for these entrepreneurs so they could take advantage of mentoring and potential investment that would come from this extended network. And we have shown that, yeah, it works. If you're intentional about supporting these entrepreneurs, they're no less than anybody else. As a matter of fact, there's research and data that shows that, executive teams that are diverse, that are led by women, tend to outperform than non-diverse teams. So, we took this direction, and we've done very well, and we've got great results to show that yes, it works.
Yeah. I mean, there's one thing which I've always found quite curious, which is when you look, particularly in the US, at the structure of who owns businesses, you realize very quickly, even anecdotally, that, minority and diverse owned businesses do outperform. And so there's almost an empirical case, therefore, to say that these should be very invested businesses. But as you found yourself, they really weren't. What was broken in the system that meant that these obviously strong investment candidates simply weren't receiving the capital? Because I think that mirrors our European experience as well.
Yeah. Well, historically, traditional venture capital, most of the entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley and elsewhere were predominantly Caucasian white, right? Mm-hmm. So these VCs essentially are pattern matching to what they know. So when you're different and you don't fit the mold, then you're different. So you're looked with a different lens and a different eye. And that's what happens, right? So it's called what's the word? It's implicit bias or bias or unconscious bias. We actually invested in a company that's trying to solve this problem, but it's unconscious bias. It's not overtly racist or overtly biased, but it's sort of like they know what they know and they pattern match to that. So that's the problem, and that's one of the problems that we're trying to solve.
Wow. And I think it would be only right for us to discuss the kind of pandemic elephant in the room, as it were. And so, the whole world's been impacted by COVID. From your perspective, how have you seen this impact your kind of portfolio of businesses and the wider investment market?
Well, I don't know a whole lot about the wider investment market. I think there are little pockets of information that I have because we're all holed up here in Oregon and we're just trying to deal with our own situation. But I could tell you that in our portfolio and the companies that we've invested in, most of them have been able to survive it. It just turned out that we made some really smart investments in hindsight in companies that had technology and products that were either catering in the healthcare space or in the remote working space or virtual space. There were some companies that were in the manufacturing and supply chain that got affected because of the supply chains being shut off from China, but they also pivoted in order to get through the crises. One of them was on Shark Tank in the middle of the pandemic, so they did quite well in their product. So overall, our companies have done well. Yes, they had to hunker down, they had to cut costs, but they also, some of them saw the opportunity to provide solutions in the virtual events and virtual workspace environment and have done quite well.
And do you think there's going to be opportunities from this as well? Because, we've all seen the rapid rise in valuation of Zoom, which has made Eric Wan very, very happy. But I'm sure there's going to be other opportunities that have come from this.
I would say that healthcare is going to be a huge opportunity in the future, given sort of what has happened. And we're already seeing some examples of that. Anything related to reducing touch, touch-free type interfaces and products are going to do well. And also anybody that's online and selling products online are going to do even better. So all those things that were for the future are here today, and any technology that allows remote sharing, remote collaboration is going to do well in this environment. I think there's a fundamental change in how businesses are thinking about co-location, are thinking about whether they really need to have a 50,000 square foot Taj Mahal to host their. I think a lot of that is now being questioned, and people have developed a sort of a new habit. It's sort of the new norm. It's no different than what happened during post 9/11, when suddenly we're having to take our shoes off to go through security, and all those things that got introduced that are now normal. And I think there's some new norms that are going to develop, especially in terms of how people collaborate to work and interact with each other.
And have you closed your first full lockdown deal yet? Because many of the startups that we're speaking to are actually worried about trying to raise money during this process because of that lack of a physical meeting, but people are still doing deals.
Yeah, well, so I'll give this in a two-part answer. So there was one deal that we were in conversations with. That was supposed to be our last deal that we stopped because what happened, we wanted to focus on our current portfolio. We actually just closed that investment, but this investment came to us prior to COVID. So I think a number of companies that were already in that investment sort of track were able to close their investments. In terms of new investments, we are not making any new investments right now. In Elevate, we are raising our next fund. But in TiE Angels, we are looking at deals, and there's 2 deals that we're looking at, which is all entirely virtual, that will likely raise money, and it will be all virtually from start to finish.
Superb. Yeah.
On the fundraise side, we've actually gotten commits entirely virtually, including from one institutional investor that we were in the pipeline, but all of the diligence and everything happened virtually. And they were able to do it virtually. There's another institutional investor that's going to do this entirely virtually. So I think the mindset is changing for investors. People have money to invest. There are deals to be had and supported. So given the new times, I think the VCs and institutional investors are trying to adapt to this sort of new normal, and everybody's trying to adapt to this new normal. So I think more and more in the future, this idea of like, I got to travel to you and check out your location may not work because the location might be virtual. So there's nothing to really check out. So.
Wow. And also, you mentioned TiE there. And obviously, some people on today's broadcast will know TiE, they'll already be members, but it would be great to just get your views on, because you've had that global perspective with TiE, why does TiE matter? What's the role TiE plays in the entrepreneurship ecosystem? And why did you stay so engaged with TiE, and what can we all as entrepreneurs learn from that in terms of mentoring and accessing networks like TiE?
Well, it's very foundational, like that mentoring piece. That's the foundation of TiE, right? It started with the idea of a give back and to support the next generation of entrepreneurs. And it's taking the experience of successful entrepreneurs and then, really with no expectation of anything in return to actually support. That idea is really powerful. The idea of give back and supporting the next generation of entrepreneurs with no expectation of returns is so pure, right? And that's very foundational to the mission of TiE, and which is what attracted me to TiE back in 2007 when TiE was getting launched in Portland, and I just happened to be starting to think about mentoring other entrepreneurs to not make the same mistakes that I did. So I really bonded with that mission, and the idea of give back, just pure give back, and to give back to anybody. So it wasn't directed towards Indus or not, it was like anybody that wants help, we're here to help. That's very unique about TiE. You don't see that a lot elsewhere. And then eventually, from mentoring, it evolved to investment because, entrepreneurs also need money. And so then that same approach to fast money, being able to write them a check, getting them to that next level, supporting them to the next level, opening up your networks to get them other investors or other help. That piece was missing from the entrepreneur ecosystem for years, and TiE led that in the early 90s in Silicon Valley, and it's still so germane and so true to the network today, and that's what keeps going.
Yeah, and the stat that I read was that in the decade since TiE's inception, it added over $200 billion of net economic wealth to businesses around the world. And a lot of that was down to mentoring. What is that importance of mentoring in the career of an entrepreneur? Because I know when I had my first business in the 90s and I was coming to the US a lot, mentoring was kind of a part of culture, but it hasn't really formed that same role this side of the pond. So it'd be great to get your reflections on that. Since I've not lived on your side of the pond, I don't know. I don't know why it's not as
as prevalent. But in the US, mentoring has been around for a long time. And, I had mentors even when there was no TiE. And I think maybe it's part of the immigrant attitude. It's about helping. I think it's very germane to the fact that this country it was created out of immigrants, and there's general empathy to help the underdog, right? And and there's general empathy to support the give back piece is very big into. The U.S. is the biggest donor in the world, right? They donate all kinds of stuff, money included. So I think most of the business community, people self-started this. And the idea of venture capital came a lot later. But the idea to help and support, sort of the next person who wants to start a business, and show them the way, right? It's not you're not telling them what to do, but showing them the way and giving them some words of wisdom. It's amazing how one or two little words of advice can be so instrumental and so foundational in their future success. And then the access to the networks and connections is so important for an entrepreneur to build a business. So they don't feel alone. It's a very lonely journey when you're trying to build a business. So having some people who can relate to you, share their experience and help you see the way is extremely important. And it works quite well out here. And should be.
I know we'll come to Dale in just a moment for the kind of audience and pre-submitted questions, but it would be remiss of me to not mention what's happening in the US at the moment. And I've seen quite rightly so on Twitter and other places that you've been very vocal in your support of the protests and what they stand for. But it would be great to get some of your reflections on what can we all do to help move the needle forward by supporting more diverse businesses, more Black-owned businesses, and investing in them, and why that matters so much to help move that needle forward?
Well, you have to look at. I think there are two communities in this country that have been, I'm trying to come up with a word that I can't, like, unfairly treated, and that's the Black community and the indigenous population, the Native Indians, whose communities were destroyed by folks that came into this country. But the Black community was forced into this country in chains at the bottom of ships, and they were bought and sold. Their culture was destroyed. I mean, I've spent a fair amount of time talking to African American people to really understand their challenges, because I chose to invest in them. And it's been 4 years of hell for them, 400 years of hell. And while changes are made, nothing has really changed. And where I come from that point is and this is data that I got from one of my lead investors, who's a mentor to me. She's African American. Is that when the slaves were freed like 150 years ago, a white owner could get a $300 tax credit from the U.S. government for letting them go. In 2014, the net value of an African American in this country was $6,500. If you took the $300 and scaled it up with the inflation rate, their net asset value has not changed in 400 years. And they've been consistently oppressed, they've been lynched, they've been murdered, and you see this in the news every day. And this last incident, the second to last incident, was it hit people deep in this country, and it hit me deep. It was already hitting me for 4 years. I mean, I've been very intentional about investing in African American entrepreneurs, but this really hit hard, and it was is like the core of this nation had not changed, is how I felt. Well, things had changed, but the core had not changed, and it's time to make that change. And the only way to make that change is to lend voice, take action, and tell people it's not acceptable, and participate in that. You and I, we come from the land of Gandhi, and that's it's germane to me.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's been such an inspiring thing, seeing so many businesses and individuals take a stand. So even across Europe and the UK, so many people have realized that this is not just a US issue, it's everyone's fight.
It's a global issue.
Just before we come, just before we come to Dale, last year we were very lucky to have you over here in Manchester for Venture Fest, and it was a real privilege to be able to interview on stage there. But what were your kind of reflections on our fair little city on your fleeting visit here?
Well, I was super impressed. I loved Manchester. It reminded me of Portland, including the rain, and the warmth of the people, and they were so welcoming. And I wish I was back there again. And I really enjoyed the visit, and I love talking to all of the entrepreneurs that were there. And I had really enjoyed it, and it had that small town atmosphere, which is what I like to live in, and that's where I live in. Why I live in Portland, Oregon. So I just felt the energy, and I hope things are going as well as they were when I was there. I know because of COVID, everybody's been affected, but I only have the best wishes for the city of Manchester.
Thank you, Nitin. And I think Manchester. I think that the people of Manchester are so close-knit and so wonderful that actually is really helping the city get through this. I've really enjoyed talking to you, and I know Dale's got a whole bunch of questions coming up as well. So I'd just like to hand over to Dale now to take questions from the audience and also the pre-submitted questions that we've had in advance. Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you, and really insightful conversation and some real insight there for us at NatWest and all the audience. So I've got a question probably for both of you, first of all. Someone that's tuning in actually from London asking how they get involved with the TiE network, first of all.
There is a TiE chapter in London. Because you want to answer that?
Yeah, so most major cities have a TiE chapter in them or a TiE chapter near them. So London has a really active chapter of TiE. So you can go to just uk.tie.org. In the north of England, our chapter covers from Manchester across to Liverpool, up to the South Lakes as well. So that's uknorth.tie.org. The important thing to remember is that once you join TiE, you are actually part of the global family. So whether you join as a general member, as we call it, which is maybe a startup that wants to receive mentoring, or a charter member who are entrepreneurs that want to give back, so you kind of pay for the privilege of mentoring, which is a beautiful thing. You become part of that global family. So lots of our members in Manchester have been interacting with chapters in India, in the US, but the best thing to do is find the chapter nearest to you, join there, and then you're connected into the TiE world.
Brilliant.
Actually, because of COVID, all our events have become virtual. So now there's a global directory of all the events happening around the world. So that COVID has actually allowed to bring this network even closer together because of virtual events.
Excellent. No, thank you. So Nitin, some questions for you then. So first of all, around investment, got quite a lot of questions actually around investment. So as a startup scale-up entrepreneur looking for investment, how should I approach this?
The first thing I tell entrepreneurs is start networking. Start joining networks like TiE and other networks that are where you can meet investors and other entrepreneurs to really, get connected into the ecosystem. That would be the way to start. I don't know what stage this entrepreneur is, because, if you're just starting out, maybe you want some angel investors, some friends and family money to get going. But as you progress and you're building your business, you want to connect into the venture community, then there are organizations in your own community that would be helpful for you to get plugged into the investment community.
Okay. And next
can
question.
I just make one? Can I make one little point on that as well?
Yeah,
I think one of the big differences I've seen between US and UK entrepreneurs is the approach to networking. So when I'm meeting entrepreneurs in the US, they see networking as that part of the journey, and they're really focused about the events they go to, who they choose to talk to, because they realize that time is really valuable. So you end up with a really good balance in the US of networking and events versus the really important getting your head down, getting stuck into building your product. And I think that's a really important thing to always factor in as an entrepreneur is to make sure that all the events you go to and the networks you get involved in, they are worth your time doing it, and that you really value that time.
Yeah, excellent. Probably leads me quite on nicely to the next question. So someone's asked, what can the UK learn from the US in the investment market?
Again, I don't, because I don't live in the UK, I'm not completely familiar. But what UK could learn is taking risks. I think US investors, and especially early stage investors, are more likely to take risks. And from what I've seen a little bit, just conversations, especially in the Euro community, that European investors are a little more conservative. They want to see more traction, and so that early stage capital isn't as readily available to UK entrepreneurs broadly, so to speak. Maybe in pockets, you end up in some accelerator in London. Maybe you have a better chance. But if you're outside of London, it's the same. Like everywhere where these entrepreneurs really don't have access to that early stage capital. And I would encourage the UK public entities and private entities to start taking risks, more risks. You don't get the rewards without taking the risks.
Excellent, thank you. And the question that's coming on the live feed. So, can you talk us through some of the common mistakes entrepreneurs make when raising investment?
So they drink their own Kool-Aid, which means they are so sold on their idea. They don't invest the skin in the game, which is to really test out their idea with potential customers. They don't really do the work that's necessary in order to make a pitch that has foundation. And by foundation means that they have data to show that their business has a market. They have the ability to go get access a team, or maybe they have a co-founder or people involved, and the idea can scale to build a substantial business. That's what the investors are looking for. If your idea is just a lifestyle business where you take a small amount of money and then you earn some income and you can just keep going at it, that's great. There's room for it. But for raising venture capital or serious amounts of investment to grow a business, you got to have lots of other things that you got to worry about than just your idea or a prototype that you might have created. And the most important part that we look for is customer validation.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, so a couple of questions on the COVID subject. So how are businesses in general recovering from COVID in the States?
That's a loaded question. So you have to look at the kinds of businesses that we're talking about. My city, Portland, is still in phase 0, which means the restaurants are not open, bars are not open. So a lot of those businesses are closed, and some of them have gone out of business. And I don't think some of them will ever come back to business again. So that part of the industry, the food and beverage industry, the restaurant industry has been, really badly hurt. If you're looking at online businesses, so anything that's retail, brick and mortar, very badly affected. And even as things open up in these different phases, I know some of the cities here in phase 1, which means you can only hold 25% of your customers and be 6 feet apart and all that kind of stuff. And if the cases go up, then they shut them down. So I would say for the next 18 months, things are going to be really bad for businesses like that. The businesses that have done well are ones that were selling online. So if you look at consumer product companies, I know of many consumer product companies that sell like athletic equipment, clothing, and yoga accessories, all doing phenomenally well. Because people are home, sitting home, they need all this stuff, they're buying it. You try to buy an exercise bike, there's a 2-month wait list. So other products are doing quite well because people are sitting home and they are able to buy it at the convenience of their living room. Other large enterprises like I would say software companies that are providing business critical, mission critical software to run businesses are doing well because people need this. It's a utility. So anything that's a utility is doing well. The car industry has been hurt, but now they're starting to open up. I was just at my car dealer to get my car serviced, and business seemed to have picked up and doing just fine today. So that's kind of what I'm seeing. I think some businesses will definitely go away because of this, because people are going to realize that they don't need these things, that they can happily do some stuff from home. I think commercial real estate is going to go through a complete transformation in this country. Industrial real estate, on the other hand, is going to do extremely well because more and more companies want warehouses to ship their product.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. Okay, questions around mentorship. So I've had a bad experience around being mentored. Any advice how I get this right next time?
Well, I had a very bad experience too. And what I did was I became more deliberate. I wouldn't jump into quote unquote bed with any mentor. Like I would try before I buy, so to speak. So be more careful, be selective. Just because somebody says they can help you and do this for you, do that. If somebody asks you for money up front to help you, run. Like do not proceed with that. So part of it is you gotta be you gotta be willing to spend the time to scope out your mentors, just as you should be willing to spend the time to scope out your investors. So just because you run into somebody at an event and you like them and they offer you something and you go for it without really doing your homework, it always helps to do some background checks on these people as well. And that's the other lesson I learned was, and with LinkedIn and social media today, if you meet somebody, go check out, see if you know people who might know them and do some background check on them.
Yeah. I think the other thing you've also got to remember, and it's a bit of a weird one early on in the journey, is also introspect a little bit to figure out what is the thing that you need help with, because you need to kind of know what your strengths and weaknesses are to be able to understand how people can help you. But I think what Nitin said around some of those red flags are really important. So, even now, if I'm out at different events, you run into lots of people who are, in inverted commas, business mentors who've never had a business. And I think that's sometimes a bit of a red flag for me personally. Sorry, Nitin, go on.
Well, they never had a business, or if they had a business, now they're sort of a business coach, but they want to charge you a bunch of money, or they want to charge some money, or they promise you they can help you raise money, but you got to verify and ask for references. So it's okay to ask for references from people and say,
totally.
Yeah, I'd love to have you a mentor, but can you name 3 mentees that I can go talk to that can validate what you're talking about? So that's what I would do.
And also just be honest, so there's been occasions in TiE where, if when you meet, with TiE, when you meet somebody new as a mentor, even then I'll always say to people, look, that chemistry that you have between people is so important to get that maximum out of a mentor relationship. And if it doesn't feel right, that's completely fine. Not everyone has to like everyone. And that chemistry bit is so critical to getting the mentor equation right.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Final question is around decision making. So I'm being challenged with really tough decisions at the moment. How should I balance that with future after COVID?
Make those tough decisions now. Don't defer them.
Okay.
If they're tough decisions, that means you got to make them. And don't be afraid. Again, I don't know what these decisions are, but they're likely to do with something with either firing somebody or reducing cost or shutting certain portions of your business down that are not performing well. If those are in front of you, make them now. Don't wait. Because the more you prolong, it's going to come bite you later. That's what I would suggest.
Yeah. There's I think one of the challenging things sometimes in businesses, people don't often stop to read the small print when you sign up as a company director. So, there's a lot of responsibility attached to that role and a lot of legal accountabilities, and you have a duty of care, and there's so many things you have to do. And when you do take on that responsibility of starting a business or a leadership role in a business, you've got to be mindful of those, because those responsibilities mean that you have to be able to make those decisions when necessary to protect everybody. And unfortunately, running a business when the times are good's the fun bit, and that's the kind of sexy bit of entrepreneurship we all see. But hard decisions are part of day-to-day life in running a business, and you have to get comfortable with them. But that's where mentors are really important, because I've had loads of calls these past couple of weeks from entrepreneurs I'm mentoring through TiE saying, what do I do? And I can say to them, you've just got to take that decision. It's part of the course of running a business, I'm afraid.
One of my portfolio CEOs, female founder, is in the event business, and the event business, in-person event business, was immediately destroyed when the shutdown happened. All events got canceled, present and future. So her, her revenue stream was gone, and she anticipated that because she was an event manager before she launched the software company. And she took hard decisions even without the board. She came to the board meeting with all the decisions made. And what she did was she pretty much shut down the office, furloughed people, cut the costs down to build the runway. She built the runway first before even figuring out how much revenue she would get. And she immediately pivoted the company towards virtual events. And last month, this company did over $1 million in revenue. They're hiring people. That's called the tough decision making. If it was another CEO, we probably would have had to have 5 board meetings to convince that CEO to make those decisions. And by that time, things would have been too late. So if there are tough decisions in front of you, make them now. Don't wait.
Excellent, Nitin. Thank you so much, and really, really insightful. Great discussion, great topics covered. Just want to say a huge thank you for everyone at NatWest. Vikas, I'll hand back to you just to wrap up and give some insight around week 4.
Well, no, first of all, Nitin, thank you so much for joining us. I've missed hanging out with you. It's been a long time, and also thank you to everyone for joining us for these TiE and NatWest Tea Time talks every Thursday. So next week, we're joined by Mark Adelstone, who's the chairman of Beaverbrooks, who are one of the largest high street jewelers in the UK. But more than that, he's also one of the UK's most established philanthropists. He's pretty much written the book on how UK businesses adapt to corporate social responsibility and do it well. So we're going to learn a lot from him next week about philanthropy, about corporate responsibility, and how we can all do better and support the communities around us. So looking forward to seeing you all again then. And thank you again to Nitin for your time this evening.
Thank you, Vikas. Thank you, everybody.